Hello, friends and fellow Earthlings. Welcome to All the Horrible Things, episode 62. We were off last week due to Papa's Day, among other reasons. But today we are talking alien invasion films. In the past, we talked about the scariest of alien creature designs and such, but today we're actually going to talk about which of the alien flicks out there kind of get to us the most.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. You'd think there'd be more. You would think there would be more alien movies.
Which is something to consider in itself, and perhaps people are suppressing the alien scripts because they want the awareness lesser out there. There's a good reason we're doing this topic this week, because for the most part, we're kind of talking about older films. Like you said, there's not enough alien invasion stuff out there. I feel like the latest one with any sort of budget and stardom was the Tomorrow War with Chris Pratt on Amazon Prime.
Oh, yeah. Good call. Yeah.
I think that was the last one of any worth.
Right. And I think before that, there was a recent Independence Day, right? There was like a number 4 that came out.
Yes.
But not very good, maybe not worth noting. But it seems to be something that is done like every at least 5 years.
Yeah. And the trouble is not all that effectively. And I'm sure a lot of you guys are aware, granted, it hasn't really been on mainstream networks, but a really high-ranking official who worked for essentially UAP Recovery Task Force, a guy named David Grusch, is very credible, has come out. He's a whistleblower saying that there's all of these programs behind the scenes that are being funded by the government in some way, but that Congress has no oversight over. And according to him, he has seen hella documentation that suggests not only has there been 12 at least otherworldly ships, spaceships, UAPs, but they don't even know for sure if they're spaceships. And that's what I liked about this guy, is that he was really not being like, no, this is not necessarily alien crafts. This could be interdimensional crafts, is something he said, which I found very interesting, right? But yeah, it's essentially the first really credible person to come out, and he's attempting to get Congress to look further into what's going on. Supposedly there are July hearings with Gillibrand. I know she's at in terms of the Democrats, one of the top ones doing this, and then Rubio as well. There is suggestions that they're doing this because it's an inevitable disclosure that will come out, and by being at kind of the forefront of this, even though you might look like a crackpot to some now, if it does come out and you were at the forefront of it, both of these two senators have run for president in the past, so it would kind of bolster their credibility when they are running and such, and willingness to get the truth out to the public. How about you, man? Are you a believer? Where do you stand on this?
Oh, yeah, I am. I'm not necessarily... I mean, I'm somebody who wants to believe, right? You know, I want all of these stories to be real because someone said, you know, it's either there are aliens in this universe and we should be terrified, or that we're alone and that's almost equally as
terrifying. I'm with you in that I believe, but unlike you, I don't necessarily I wish I didn't believe, because I personally think the implications thereof could be catastrophic for us as a whole, depending on their nature, obviously. But to kind of get back to what this guy was also suggesting is that there is more than one species, and potentially among us already. And not only that,
among us,
they have made deals with some of these people that are behind the curtain in terms of when the disclosure will happen. And I guess the people that are in contact with this, I guess you could call it intergalactic confederation or whatever, union, I don't think that we're ready for it. What do you think would happen if the world found out that we got to invest in tinfoil hats?
Well, you know, maybe as a world, it's really hard to believe that we could get on the same page about anything, right? I mean, we barely survived this. Take this lightly. I don't take this lightly, is that we barely survived a pandemic. You know,
Yes,
there's too many conflicting things going on amongst countries, and in the movies it's funny. It's like the thing that unifies us all as a world is like alien life forms showing up, and
I think most of that unification, certainly in Independence Day, had to do with Bill Pullman's just ability to rally people.
Yeah, you got to have the right guy, and or not. You have the right person in charge, right?
Yes.
And you know, it's kind of interesting that so much of it is secretive. I mean, I don't know, since the 1950s there have been claims. They've been keeping this well under wraps since the 50s, and you have to believe that some of this stuff is real. And if people are already starting to believe, maybe they are just, you know, sort of doing like a transitional thing here, and they're slowly trying to
the slow
get that information
disclosure, I guess, is what they're calling it. A
instead
lot
of
of
just,
people,
you know, flipping the lights on. No, I was
yeah,
just saying.
You're absolutely right. I think, I'm sorry, I got to take up the tinfoil hat. It's conducting heat within. I don't know how much it's blocking stuff out. You're absolutely right. I think if like you said, turning the lights off or on, it would be too sudden, and you need this kind of like gradual release of information. And supposedly with this Grusch guy, that is going to demand that Senate look into this, and they're going to find programs potentially where there is this reverse engineering, essentially, is what's going on. The reverse engineering by these private companies. I know like Battelle is potentially one of them. Battelle, it's like battle, but with an ELL at the end. That's one of the companies that supposedly reverse engineering these things. So then you got like these private companies who then would be selling back this technology to the government for profit, when essentially the government, that should be ours. You know what I mean? That shouldn't be sold back, sort of thing. So that's one of the issues involved. But yeah, for me, the implications on like religion are one of the scariest ones. I think people probably will still go on believing, but it's hard to then say that the earth is only, what do they say, 5,000 years old? Some more Christians?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think, in terms of time, in terms of our purpose, then are we like ants? Are we potentially, you get to that missing link thing, right? Because the closest thing to us on this planet are like chimps or something. And we are just so profoundly different than them. It's then suggested maybe they were here and accelerated our evolution. Yeah. And they essentially then would be our creator.
Ancient Aliens, the guy on the History Channel who does Ancient Aliens.
Yes. Yeah.
But you know what would be interesting, though, is if, I mean, some things would start to make more sense, right?
Yes.
Like the pyramids, the fact that around the same time the pyramids in Egypt were being built, there are pyramids being built in other parts of the world, and they had no communication. It's just those weird things that, not to make it sound like conspiracy theories, because I don't think that's what's going on here, but it's just kind of hard to explain, right?
Wholly hard to explain. But I do like to consider the other end of it, the spectrum here, and that it could be some sort of psyop. All this is coming out because not only did you have the Grusch thing happen, but then there was this really interesting incident in Las Vegas with this family who called 911 and said that this was after what scientists are saying was a meteor, probably a meteor.
Yeah.
Dropped around Vegas. Actually, supposedly the meteor wasn't even close to Vegas, but when this thing dropped, it was very visible. It was green crashing ball. And then this family in Vegas claimed to see 10-foot creatures. They kept calling them creatures.
So much so that they called the cops on them.
They called the cops, and the cops actually like kind of legitimized it, because like, we're actually taking this seriously because we did just see something fall from the sky. We saw
something too.
But the thing is, they've kind of like gone dark since then. There's a really strange business of this family now not wanting to talk to people, but still saying that it happened. So there is concerns that this is all like a distraction, kind of only to potentially delegitimize this guy Grusch, by making it seem kind of fantastical and, you got these creatures in backyards, this is all silliness. But there are those that then think that Grusch himself has been, like, he believes what he's saying, but he's been fed misinformation, so that we as the public will get distracted by this. Granted, I would think that would be more true were it on more mainstream networks, because you're not going to find anything about this on CBS or NBC, BBC. You're only going to find it on independent news channels on the web.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was this potential psyop to distract us from what's really happening, or potentially as a means to get more money for the military-industrial complex, yep, there's definitely aliens out there, so we're going to need some more money, Pentagon style, So for me, I just think that there's too many people that have had very similar encounters and sightings and stories, and I definitely like the Nimitz encounter, some of these videos of crafts that move in ways that are just completely inexplicable to us, and they're obviously not drones or balloons.
Right.
I think it's plausible, and I also don't put it past the possibility of underwater business going on. They might not even be from elsewhere. There might be something going on in the Earth that we're unaware of. You got the capacity to fly through space. Are you
suggesting that maybe there was some other form of evolution going on here, and that there are underwater people?
Whether they're underwater people or potentially people from another place that have the capacity to hide underwater, because I know there's like mountain ranges under the sea that are like bigger than the ones we have up here. They're going to be able to have the technology to kind of create an Atlantean sort of habitable zone in theory. And maybe it's just an outpost. You don't know. We don't know. And that's the beautiful part about it. And I think that's why some of these movies about alien invasions or visits can really get to you. So I'm coming from the perspective of that it's very likely. I would like to see hard evidence. Closest we've come is some of these videos from very credible people from the Air Force that this is a vehicle that is moving like we have no idea how they're moving, like the Tic Tacs and such. But yes, I mean, this is not our show, this is not what we're talking about. This is just the context of which has brought us there, because for me, it's very fascinating and very fun to think about, but at the same time, very scary to think about. So
I agree. The unknown is terrifying. The unknown is terrifying, and something, I think it was, I can't think of the expert right now. Years ago, he said all of these movies that have done aliens, I think he was actually criticizing Star Wars, that they wouldn't be humanoid. A lot of times Hollywood displays or shows aliens or people living in space. The further away you go from the sun, the less you're going to look like us.
Yes,
which
I agree.
Segues into the grays.
And I think that's a very strong point to make. That being said, if you were trying to reach out without just obliterating us, trying to get us a message or something, like some of these incidents, I don't know if you heard of the Zimbabwe incident, 1994, a bunch of kids, saw a ship and creatures come out of it, and it felt like they were being telepathically communicated to, ultimately warning them about what we're doing to the planet, sort of thing. But what if they are so technologically advanced, wouldn't they have the capacity to look maybe how they wanted, to look to us, and they simultaneously don't want to scare us or be something that we couldn't actually comprehend? They would have to present in a means that is understandable, but also like humanoid enough that you're not scared of them. And then if you ever think about like the Greys, because you're right, we're going to talk about two Grey movies here or more. The way that they look, it focuses on what we kind of associate the most with intelligence, right? Eyes and brain size. So you have these balloon-shaped heads, and the eyes are ginormous, and you got it's insinuated that the brain in there is going to be huge. So it's like, okay, we are like you, but we're not like you, and we're smarter than you. So be aware of that. Granted, they're usually pretty flimsily bodied. You know what I mean? You could probably beat them up in a fist fight.
I mean, there are so many different variations, right? There's smaller Greys, there's tall, thin Greys,
right?
But they all tend to have the same facial features, like you're describing.
True. And commonly, it seems like they have the capacity to kind of like stop you in their tracks, to have telepathic powers over you. And that just happened in this Las Vegas incident. The kid who called 911 says, I looked it in the eyes and I felt like I was frozen, like I literally could not move. So, yeah, let's talk about the most impactful one to you. Let's start with you. Which of these Grey movies that have been released hit you the hardest?
Oh, I'd have to say the movie Signs.
Yes, that's my number one as well too.
Yeah, M. Night Shyamalan's Signs. It was displayed to us as what a first contact might actually look like. Like he was so smart about that. Like, because there's going to be eyewitnesses. There's going to be cell phone footage of it that, like, when they want to be seen, they'll be seen. But they're at the birthday party, or they're showing the kids at the birthday party in South America. It's one of the best scenes in the film. Like, it displays, it's almost like reminiscent of the Sasquatch being caught on film.
Right.
Like
that's
that
exactly
profile.
what it's like. That Brazilian birthday party walk across the alley shot is, people have actually used that in the last couple of weeks who haven't seen Signs. They put it up there and TikTok, this is the footage.
You're like, no, we've seen that movie.
Right.
Idiots.
I, for some reason, when I rewatched it, I had thought that was the first glimpse that we'd gotten of them, but it wasn't. You see it on the roof.
The roof.
First.
Yeah, and I think that's why this is so impactful, because I can almost, I saw this in the movie theater, and that shot on the top of the barn set chills down your spine. Then you get a better look at it on the tape. And then, we see it at the end of the movie, and it's not as scary.
No, it's definitely the 2002 dated CGI there when we finally see it up close in the light. But yeah, the ideas.
The idea is that glimpses of them will be caught, and it's going to be spread all over internet and television. It will spread like wildfire when although there's going to be a bunch of people who question it. But in this movie, the thing that is so amazing about it is like everyone just jumps on the bandwagon. Like, there are aliens and they are here. The crop signal, the crop
circles.
What are the actual crop circles? Thank you. Are their way of communicating or whatever. But I have to say that's probably one of the better alien films, like First Contact films, I've ever seen.
100%. I want to talk a little bit more about Signs, but I forgot that I wanted to talk about the history of Greys and like where they first popped up. And supposedly in 1891, you got Kenneth Follingsby. Meta, A Tale of the Future was the first one to suggest this balloon-shaped head with the big-eyed aliens. As far as I could find, there's nothing prior to that had that look documented. And then in 1933, Gustav Sandgren's The Unknown Danger had the template of the Greys that we currently think about more than anything. That first one was kind of more just the balloon-shaped, big-eyed, but then in 1933 it was really fleshed out. And then significantly in 1965, the Barney and Betty Hill abduction. I'm not sure you might have heard of this, but
I'm not familiar.
Yeah, it was a couple who claimed to have been abducted, and that is exactly how they described the aliens that did it. That being said, that one seems like it might have been debunked, but at the same time, I don't know. The debunking could also be planted, sort of like, because supposedly they said, oh, this abduction in the story came out 6 days after an episode of Outer Limits that was very similar to what they had described. Like, I don't know, how does somebody really conflate, and maybe one person, but a couple to conflate that and to really not get anything from it other than ridicule? Yes, I digress. Back to Signs, and let's talk the actual movie itself. Why I think it was so effective beyond the kind of like it's like the Jaws of alien movies, right? Because you don't really see it, you just see little bits of it before you get the full beast at the end. Right. Let's talk casting here for a second, because I think the fact that it was set, first of all, in a farm in this remote location, and we're just following the family, made it that much more effective. But did you hear who was supposed to have these parts? Because as everyone knows, Mel Gibson is our lead, and Joaquin Phoenix is his brother.
Well, I had heard that Bruce Willis was supposed to play the
Really? I didn't hear that one.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because after they did Sixth Sense together, I think that's who he had intended the role to be for.
What do you think? How would that have made it better or worse in your opinion?
You know what? It probably would have been about the same. I think they're both maybe not like the greatest actors of all time, but they're great leading men, and I think it certainly works well with Mel Gibson.
Yeah. I hadn't heard about the Willis thing. I know that it was offered to Clint Eastwood, Mel Gibson's role, and Paul Newman at the time because their character was supposed to be considerably older. But what he had written the part that Joaquin gets of Merrill, the brother, who swings away at the end, was initially written for Mark Ruffalo. So imagine like a Bruce Willis, Mark Ruffalo recasting of that. I think that would have been great. I love Joaquin. And I was thinking as I was watching it, I hate this character. His character's actually kind of a dick. And if it was anybody other than Joaquin playing it, I think I couldn't have rooted for him. But the way Joaquin Phoenix is able to like take these really dickish characters and make them likable despite what they're actually saying, their dialogue and stuff, I got to give it to him because, you know, in the fact that it was like two brothers, I liked the scenario, you know, the widowed.
Yeah.
Father of two, and I don't know. I didn't really love the flashbacks, and I was going to ask you something because Mara doesn't like cameos from Mr. Shyamalan. How do you feel about him being in there as the man who fell asleep at the wheel and killed Mel Gibson's wife?
Could they have found a better actor? Absolutely. Did it work this time? I think it did. I thought it was fine. I didn't have a problem with it. Sometimes when the director makes an appearance, it can really take you out of it, which is very dangerous. And like, I don't know if it's that whole obsession with Hitchcock, you know, like wanting to do like those cameos, but now he's got role, like dialogue, and like, it's risky. It's really risky. But I think in this scenario that character, it's a big character too, but I don't think, you know, I would have cared if it was somebody else or if it was him.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't too distracted by it. I think like when he shows up at the end of Old, I didn't like that a lot more than this one kind of worked at the time for me.
Right.
Significantly, I saw this one in New Orleans. It's like when I go to a new city for the first time, I love going and seeing a movie to kind of affiliate with that city. So it was the summer of 2002, and I was supposed to be going to the Jenny Jones show the next morning. I go to this party where there are these three people in grades younger than me driving to California, and they're like, we got an extra spot. Do you want in? I said, sure. So I handed the keys to my car to a buddy and said, bring this back to my parents' place. I got in the car with these three crazy kids, and the cars broke down at the Mississippi River. Like the bottom of the car literally just fell out. And we were not going to give up, but we did compromise. Instead of California, I suggested, hey, maybe it was a sign that we crashed down here at the old Mississippi. What's at the bottom of the old Mississippi? New Orleans. None of us have been there. And the dude sold what was left of his car for parts and bought us all Greyhound tickets down to New Orleans. And I stayed there for like 10 days. One of those guys who randomly went there still lives there to this day. Talk about strange.
Insane.
Fate. You know what I mean? But I'll never forget feeling like a fish out of water, an alien myself in a new town that I wasn't expected to be in, then going and seeing signs there. It was a very memorable movie-going experience, given how good the movie is, and then being in such an odd place on top of that.
Sure sounds like an epic story.
It is fate.
Set up the movie. That's amazing. It's one of those movies that I can still watch to this day. Like I love rewatching this movie, and then you get a little disappointed. Agree. Yeah,
I would love to see if there's like deleted scenes or something. I've never looked into the DVDs or Blu-rays of it, but I'm definitely curious if there's more.
Let me pose this question to you. Do you think it would be a good idea or a bad idea for a director to say, go back? Because I actually had this thought a couple of weeks ago. I was rewatching The Mummy 2 was on TV or something, and they have The Rock playing the Scorpion King, and it is just god-awful visual effects work. And I'm like, what? You know, they could go back and, you know, quote-unquote remaster this movie and redo it. Would you mind if M. Night Shyamalan did a new version of this movie and redid the end to make the alien more terrifying?
I would love that. I think that'd be a great idea. It's definitely right for like a re-release, especially if there is some sort of disclosure this summer, like people suggest there's going to be. I think that would be great. I'd see it in a heartbeat. Granted, it does have the Mel Gibson problem. You know this. That is its biggest issue, I think, in terms of, I don't know, longevity, respectability.
Sure.
It sucks, but that's the truth. One thing I also really liked about this film was it came out in 2002, and this was literally the summer, not even a year had passed before 9/11. And essentially what it echoes is all of the world watching this horrible thing happen on TV together that, you know, had such implications. So I thought it actually was doing deeper stuff than Shyamalan's movies. I don't know if it probably wasn't conscious. I'm not exactly sure timeline of when it was filmed and such, but certainly thematically and mimetically, I guess you could say, it was mimicking what was actually kind of just had happened. Because aliens are kind of like terrorists in a way, and impossible to relate with beings that want to kill you, you know?
Well, right. At least the Hollywood versions, yes. We don't know
and
what they
course,
really want.
From the sky, too, just like had happened then.
Right.
So it kind of worked. How else did it work for you? Of course, the birthday scene, that's the most important scene in the whole flick. In terms of the chill factor, because this movie does give you chills.
Yeah, I think there's some other really great horror scenes that are written really well, where like the scene where you see the foot of the alien in the cornfield, which looks like almost like a corn maze because there's rows and it kind of just gets pulled in there. But there are also there's some really funny moments too, and like when they're running around the house, and what you think you'd be, what do they think they're chasing teenagers or something, and then they're running incredibly fast too, and you think you'd catch something, but clearly these aliens can either jump really high because we keep seeing them on the like top of the roof, and so yeah, I mean, I think just overall this film does a great job of setting up really scary scenes.
Absolutely, some really good jump scares. And you're right. I don't know. Have you seen the film Charlie Sheen, The Arrival? It's another alien movie where there's aliens that I guess they can look like us too. But you brought up the jumping bit, and then one of the coolest parts of the aliens is they have legs that bend back the other way so that they can jump crazy high. Yeah. But despite Charlie Sheen, The Arrival's a really, really good movie. Him and Terry Polo. It's one that kind of slipped my mind when we were thinking about doing this. I highly suggest The Arrival. I remember being really great. And of course, there's the newer movie Arrival that has Amy Adams in it. Also good, but I wanted more, you know, for my alien movies. The other really awesome scare spot for me was when they were in the basement, and then you got the kid up against, I guess it's like some sort of heating grate or something.
I imagine it's and maybe at one point this was like let out to like a storm door or something, because it seems like it was a farm, right? So it may have had that type of entrance at one point, and they redid it. But yeah, there's a really great scene where they're all down there, and there's some sad moments too when they're setting up their last meals, and he's like, we can have whatever we want, and they cook all those meals, and just
that was
really
a powerful moment.
It was powerful, because like, oh my gosh, is this family gonna get wiped out?
Right. I guess the only aspect I didn't like, you're absolutely right, that moment where he's like, we can all eat what we want, it's our last meal, whatever. And then he breaks down at the table. The thing that always bothered me about the film, I'm kind of over it now, I guess, is just the whole religious undertones wasn't my favorite. But granted, it is really speaking to what would happen to so many people with faith. I feel like. The only thing is, it kind of does the inverse of what I think would happen, in that I think aliens would make people lose their faith more. He is then, because of this swing away and his wife's prophecy of how to kill the aliens, water everywhere. There's definitely issues I have with the mechanisms in which they end the movie with. But I
was say, but on paper, if you were reading it or writing it, it is a really cool foreshadowing. It's just I think it's in that moment, in that scene, that you're already looking at this alien and it kind of takes you out of it because there's a great shot where you see the reflection of the alien in the TV tube that's turned off.
That was good.
And that still kind of works. And then they straight up show you, and then the alien's got this gas that comes out of its wrist, and the reason he's got asthma and his lungs shut down is for this moment too. That's a little bit of a stretch for me.
Right.
But like he evolved somehow. Like that's why he has asthma. Doesn't necessarily make sense for me, but a fun way of connecting dots, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, that's what he does. He's got to give that Shyamalan twist or at the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's forgivable based on mostly the mise en scène, the mood that it creates throughout the entirety of the film. This is like one of those things where this movie just banked on video,
Made
crazy money on video. Because it only made $72 million opening weekend, I guess, which is actually pretty good. Oh no, you're right. It was theatrically in the States, but it made almost that amount just in rental alone. And I don't think that would be the case in streaming today. So, but that being said, compared to other films, it's not a lot of money, and that's what I've kind of noticed with all these alien movies is they don't really bank, and maybe that is part of why they don't get made as much and not as profitable. I think maybe Cloverfield is the one that made the most, but I digress.
Cloverfield probably profited because their budget was a lot smaller. So
that too.
Yeah.
Let's talk about
that. Is interesting though, because I was going to say because that is still at a time where blockbusters should have been, coming off of the success of Sixth Sense and Invincible. I think came out before Signs. That was probably looked at as kind of a failure. Only bringing in 72.
Yeah, I mean, that being said, he does call it his biggest popcorn flick, which I think is fair. Despite the fact that it moves a little slow, I think it is that one where like you're kind of nervously just eating the popcorn and waiting for that jump scare that you're going to lose half of your bag to. Okay, what other gray movies? Because we're going to talk gray films here primarily. And for me, talk about then why they're more scary than some of these more larger scale alien invasion films with more insectoid or squid-like creatures. Is there another gray movie that hit you?
It's something that I haven't watched in a long time, and I wanted to rewatch, but I couldn't find it. But do you remember the film The Fourth Kind?
Yes, but not well.
Same, and I really wanted to rewatch it because it deals with grays and visitation. It's Mila Jovovich, I believe, is in it.
Right.
There's parts of that movie that stick in my head, and that's why I really wanted to rewatch it. But to me, it sort of laid the groundwork for Dark Skies.
Yeah. And which The Fourth Kind is actually based on a real woman,
like a case.
I think.
Yeah,
real case.
I think you're right. I don't know if you want to just. I had
let's
never
talk Dark
seen
Skies.
I had never seen it before. Just watching it for this.
Really?
Yeah.
You just watched it for the first time? Oh my gosh!
I think it kind of just went under the radar for me, even though it's a Blumhouse film, I believe. There are things I really like about this movie, and there are things that I think may be too slow.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of it, but I get where you're coming from. It did not get good reviews. A lot of people, I mean, one of the biggest criticisms with it was it's a consummate dexterity of worn out horror devices. So it was doing things like it moved, I felt fluidly, but the tropes were just so redundant, I guess you could say. But they still worked for me because the alien design in it was scary as hell to me. The way that you have the grays, but they kind of have this like neck. They can barely even hold up their own heads. So they kind of got this like hunch to them that I thought was really effective. And I felt Kerry Russell sold it personally.
I was going to say Kerry Russell's performance is really, really great. To your point about how the aliens carry themselves, I think in my mind, and I like to think this is what the filmmakers were doing, and is like to sort of use your own knowledge of what it might be like if an alien was to come down here it's probably not the same gravity density, and maybe that's why they have to carry themselves differently. And it's just little details like that I liked. But overall, I think this movie was probably pitched as like, we want to make Paranormal Activity with aliens. You know, it has that feel.
It did feel that way, 100%. Yeah. It was like they were malicious spirits more than anything. And I think that's probably why I put it in my top 2 scaries, because this certainly more so than Signs, because Signs was more about just they wanted to take over the planet, right? These Greys want to mess with you. They get pleasure out of toying with you. And there's, you know, it's a very cliche scene, but they have to go seek out the expert on aliens, played by J.K. Simmons, who kind of goes over the Greys, the insectoids, and the reptilians, but how the Greys really are kind of just mean and sadistic in a way, because they'll bat you around until they finally I think they've decided prior who they're going to take from the family for whatever means. Who knows what's going on with that. But I thought they did a good job of making it seem like it was going to be the youngest kid and then be the elder boy. I didn't see that coming when I first saw it for the first time. It wasn't super clear to me. Granted, I'd forgotten that he had these crop circle-esque designs. It's what do we call them? Geographic designs. Geometric designs that were branded onto the kid. So I guess I shouldn't have been that surprised. But I really liked that. I know a lot of people criticize it, but when they just mess with the kitchen stuff at the beginning and like set it all up in the strange, for some reason, that to me got me. I found it scary, and a lot of people thought it was goofy, but it worked for me.
To me, it looked like they were doing a I had compared this to another movie, but the one that's coming to mind is Poltergeist. In the beginning, when they start, they stack the chairs, they mess around with the kitchen. I kind of felt like this was like an homage to that scene. I also like, it seems sort of playful, and then you're like, they're really just messing with you. They kind of want to make you feel crazy until the point where your life, it's just one big research project, right? That's all humans are to them.
Yes. And part of why I really like it is because, unlike Signs, I feel like this is horror based. You know what I mean? It's definitely more of a horror alien movie than anything else. Signs does have elements of horror, of course, but it's more like suspense for me in Signs, where this one is literally when you got the people like just walking in a trance and then their mouth just opens, and you know, when the kid is in the park and his mouth opens and he wet his pants, I don't know, for some reason it just had, like you said, it's a perfect blend of Paranormal Activity and the alien film. It works for me. But there are the cliches, like the alarm systems going off. You do have the trance-like possession going on. Of course, your expert explains everything that's going on to them and how it's happened before. Birds crashing into the window. Then that's one part I don't really love. It's just too obvious, the direction to go with it. But as a whole, I really liked it. And I've seen this one a lot. That's why I'm shocked you missed it, honestly. Maybe it was sort of just hand, and like I decided not to watch it for whatever reason. It's also interesting that, I mean, I know that there's not a ton that they show, but it was only PG-13. I felt it dealt with some other serious, like home-like behavior. When they first see all the bruises and stuff on the kid, you feel like something's going on at home. And even Kerry Russell blames the husband. And I really felt like it still kind of deserved an R rating, and maybe that would have helped it overall. Because I think sometimes people see trailers for stuff and like, PG-13, I'm not seeing that. And I think it can be the death of a movie. So, they should have leaned into the horror aspect more and gone the extra mile with it. I totally agree with you there. The other one I just wanted to mention, because I had been trying to find it for a while. I finally got a hold of it because I remember as a kid, and when I worked at video stores, I never rented it. I was always scared just by the cover of it. Was Communion, and
I was going to say, is it the Christopher Walken movie?
Right, which is actually based on a book and a supposed experience of the person who wrote the book. And I watched it, and it's certainly not that scary in the context of other things that you've seen.
Right.
But for 1989, I think it came out. It does things I haven't seen before. It really kind of deals more with how a person can move on, or not even move on, but accept what has happened to them, an abduction, and the implications then on his real life and on his sanity. It wasn't as flashy as some of these other ones because it was really rooted in the domestic relationship between him and his friends and his wife and son. But as on the cover and the sleeve or whatever, you do have that stereotypical
the alien's head, right? Yeah,
with the cephalod. I don't know how to say that. Cephalopod eyes like a squid or an octopus would have, sort of thing.
Right.
And it got me, man. I don't know. And Christopher Walken's performance alone is worth watching it for. But it's cut really weird. It's a very oddly directed and produced film. It has a lot of strange cutscenes, I think, that speak to his own mental breakdown. But what's weird about it is yes, okay, your stereotypical aliens are scary, but there's a secondary alien in this one, which are these small little like blue munchkins, and kind of look like little blue Ewoks in a way, who are the ones that kind of do the physical stuff for the more brainy stereotypical alien.
The minions. Yeah,
they are like the minions, but they just look like they're straight out of Star Wars or something, and they're not at all scary, and it takes away any sort of like gravitas the film might have.
That's too bad.
Because I guess they were called kobolds or something, and kobolds are like creatures that live within the Earth too. So what I found interesting is that it was kind of dealing with both the space extraterrestrials and then these super terrestrials, I guess you could say, the ones that live within that are working with them. But I digress. I can't recommend it, but it did something different. That's for sure.
Sure.
But even though it was cheesy, I'm going to argue that compared to the other sort of alien invasion films, they take the cake because they deal more with psychology of the non-gray / more intimate depictions in film. Which ones do you like and why?
Well, something that we didn't talk about, but it sort of just pops into my head when I think of it, is Mars Attacks. It is just such a fun movie. Such a fun movie. I mean, yes, you have the Tom Cruise-led War of the Worlds. You have...
Which is such an amazing first act.
Yes.
It's so good at the beginning and trails off.
It goes where you don't want it to go.
Right. Just the whole scene of everyone gathering around when the pulse from the street, and then everyone gets zapped. Just that first scene with the lightning too, the mood that he creates in that War of the Worlds was great. But then you have shit characters. Like the sun was the worst. I hate that sun in that movie. I know I brought that up multiple times. But what else?
I mean, there's Independence Day, which we sort of talked about the fourth one earlier, but I think it might be one of, I mean, if not the most notable, I think one of the most popular. Just because I think everyone's seen it, and it has some really amazing, I mean, even in the trailer when you see them just destroying buildings, and I think the White House gets it, but it's it kind of has the same problem of showing what the alien looks like, and it's, I think, you know,
not
while
that
that movie's
scary
going
when
on,
you see it.
No, and I think everyone's got their own idea, so when you see it, you're like, ruined. You kind of wanted it to be a gray, but instead it's more of like a, I don't, what, there's got to be another
like a
term
Men in
for
Black character, you know what I mean? I hate to say, but it felt like it was in the same world as Men in Black, and it just couldn't take it seriously. And you actually bring up a point that I wanted to make, in that these larger scale invasion ones, the scares don't necessarily come from the aliens, and oftentimes they're really bogged down in the humor. You know what I mean? I know that from my perspective, they're bogged down. I'm sure for an audience, you maybe need that, but they don't take themselves seriously. And even like the ones I was going to mention, Edge of Tomorrow, which I absolutely adore that movie. But it does have so much humor in it that it does kind of take away from the effect for me, because the scariest parts of movies like Edge of Tomorrow, Independence Day, or even Starship Troopers is that so many people die. You know what I mean? They're not characters that we know, but it's just like
catastrophic.
Catastrophic casualty numbers. I mean, that's for me the turning point in Starship Troopers is when Johnny Rico's whole family is just obliterated, and then he decides to sign up or whatever. But all of these just are more humorous than they are horrific or sci-fi even, you know? And that, I guess, is what kills me. I'd much rather have the intimate story
I think so
than
too.
the grand one.
I think so too. And I think it's I mean, there's a place for both. 100% there's a place for both. Even though they don't make as many as we would like, I would have to agree with you. I'd like it to lean more into horror because I think, again, the unknown is terrifying. And when you make it an action movie starring Will Smith, it's more of a roller coaster adventure instead of...
You're right. It's more of a ride. It's a blockbuster versus sufficiently horrific. Tale of Those from Beyond, like The Thing, does that really well. We could have talked about the first couple times I'd watched The Things. It does have a scare factor, and it takes itself seriously. There's moments of levity, but it's rooted in the scare and the unknown, like you said. Absolutely.
Right. And another thing about these genre films is that most of the scary ones deal more with practical effects instead of the visual effects. Like even Signs could have done probably something more terrifying with a practical alien there.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is interesting because usually when you need a visual effect like that, it's because there's either a lot of them and it would be way too expensive to create all of those practically, or it's so unique and maybe the scale of it, the scope of it is too big to build it practically and make it move. But I'd have to say, if you made a gray alien film with practical suits, it would be terrifying.
It'd be amazing. Yes, I completely. Give me a gray large scale invasion where it has like the Mars Attacks without the humor sort of thing. That'd be great. That's what we need. But maybe it's just too close for comfort. I do find it strange if this is supposed to be the big disclosure summer. You got the Pixar's next movie is going to be an alien abduction movie. Did you see that?
Really? I did not. That's a lot of fun.
It is. I'm excited about it. I mean, it looks obviously goofy and kitty
and adorable.
Same time, it's becoming something that I don't know. Maybe they're rolling it out, man. Maybe they're rolling it out. Oh, that's what I wanted to ask you. Let's say ships do roll in, are hovering, and there's impending doom. What are you going to do? What's your plan?
Well, I think we all know that major cities go first. I think it's fair to say that we need to get out of this city. So I think I'm getting in a car and just driving western Illinois, where they probably have no interest. And then you've got a lot of more open area and nowhere for them to hide. I think that's, again, living in the city, we don't have our subterranean bomb shelters, so we can't do that either.
True. I will say, though, I'd be as scared of humanity as I would be this extraterrestrial being at that point, because laws are done, chaos ensues. And as somebody who, not a fan of the old firearm, I'd be scared that the world would get.
I think we should get some swords.
Deadlier.
Let's just get some swords. It's gonna go medieval anyway.
Go trader and just be on side with the aliens. And they're like, hey, we're on your team, whatever you need. Because as long as I'll do anything, but I won't do that. And that, of course, is the anal probing, which does happen in communion, by the way.
Right. You know what's interesting, though?
I just have to mention this one moment from Communion, because it really made me laugh out loud. So right before he's about to get anally probed, like this weird tube thing comes out of the wall, and one of these little cobalt little munchkins grabs it.
I know what that's
and it does look like a microphone. And Christopher Walken looks at him like, "What are you about to sing? White Christmas?"
Hey,
like jammed
don't
into
put
him.
that in my butt.
Anyways, I'm sorry. That was the funniest one.
No, I just think it's interesting that we all immediately go to alien invasion when it could be one of these amazing things where they bring medicines to us that we don't have, and they cure all of our cancers. And it's funny that we don't focus on those things. Like, it's like, what can we trade with you, aliens? You guys like corn? We got plenty of corn.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I mean, potentially our arts, who knows if that's something they're focusing on. Maybe we're technologically bent. Yeah. I think that's the only thing we got is, oh God.
You can have
you can
Kanye.
Take him. Do all the probing you need. Good luck with that. But that's a really good point.
Yeah.
That's why I think they're more likely to not want to destroy us, I hope.
Right.
I mean,
right.
Granted, what's coming out now is that there's different types. But yeah, I think it does seem like they're more of a Jiminy Cricket, than a Monstro from Pinocchio. Right. Second cast in a row I brought up Monstro.
I think so. Louise. I think you're right.
But
well, only time will tell.
True.
Until then, look to the stars. No,
and stay alive.